what we will be mainly discussing in this first session will be mainly on participative management and leading teams. And the main objective will be to understand when and why participation should be used to improve the effectiveness of leadership within the organization. We will be discussing also delegation, how to delegate tasks, and then we will explain what are some of the benefits that, let's say, delegation offers to leaders or team leaders within organizations. We'll also discuss the different types of teams that are there, and we will discuss self-leadership as well. And in the last part, we're gonna discuss how to lead teams effectively. And in certain cases, we know the teams might be dysfunctional, how to avoid team dysfunctions as well. So it's usually we have the first question that we usually start our lectures with. And in your opinion, I would like to hear what are the factors that make the implementation of teams so challenging for many leaders? And in your opinion, what can be done to improve the situation?
Yes.
Yes,
this is Catherine. Yes. In my opinion, I really feel like the challenging for many leaders when they have to form team or they have to assign the team members to do something is more about like who is good in which area. Let's say like many people, they say like we have to put the right man in the right job. And of course, the problem is how we can do that. This team member is going to be very good in what we are going to assign. Maybe.
Yeah, I'm like, there is no right and wrong answer. It's like everything is, let's say, it's simply your own opinion, because you might have been in a situation in a team. Let's say you might have all the best workers, but that team might not function properly. That's not all to, let's say, to having the best performers sometimes. We have for example, in football. What happened to Real Madrid, for example, those that watch football, they got all the best players, but still that does not mean that team was the most successful during that particular time. So it's mainly how they perform as a team and not as individuals in this case. Anyone else, like, any opinion? Why do you think, what are the factors that actually, especially nowadays, make the implementation of teams so challenging, and what can be done to improve?
Maybe it's about the balance of the workload as well.
Okay.
I think because of the difference, people have the different personalities, and so how want to perform is really have to understand their characters and what is their strengths, all this, and how the people can listen to you to be a team.
Absolutely, diversity is like a huge challenge nowadays. Wherever you go, it's not like it used to be before. So maybe, let's say, even in your own countries, in the past you would have your own people only, but now due to globalization, the teams in different companies are constituted by different individuals coming from different, let's say, ethnic backgrounds, religious backgrounds, but also in terms of diversity, like in terms of personality, we are not the same. So that's something that it's extremely challenging within a team, because you do not have individuals that think the same, that have the same idea. So it's extremely important, but extremely crucial how those leaders do manage to, let's say, incorporate all these diversities within the team in order not to move further into conflict or dysfunctions within the team, which we're going to discuss in the last part. Anyone else, any other idea? Anyway, so we can move further with our discussion. So mainly when we talk about participative management, teams, and as well as employee participation, this is something extremely crucial in organizations. That's something that many organizations do consider it as a central issue. So we discussed earlier some of the main models. Let's say when we talk about theory Y, theory X management, theory Y recommends higher level of employee participation compared to theory X. Theory Y managers to allow employees to set, for example, their own direction for their own development. They provide them with the support compared to theory X managers who control mainly the employees, who does not involve them in the decision making. So this is mainly what we are going to discuss here. So the concept of participative management, as well as how to lead teams within the organization. Something that we can see from this figure that we have here is that use of team as well as participative management actually occurs along a continuum. So in one side, the leader retains the whole control that he has, and he makes all the decisions alone without even consulting or even, let's say, receiving information from their employees. So this is the one end of the continuum: high management control, no employee participation. And then on the other hand, we have the leader that delegates all the decision making to their followers, and then he allows them the followers or the subordinates to have their final say. However, I don't think both of these we find a lot. So only few leaders might use this extreme autocratic method, or let's say extreme delegation style, which is on this side or on this side, and mainly everything happens in the middle. So there are few organizations that can be entirely traditional or entirely team-based organizations. So it's always happens in the middle here. So it's a more balance, so not totally autocratic, but not absolute delegation. So most will fall near the middle of the continuum with a combination of teams and traditional hierarchical structures as well. So when we talk about using participation, we know that it is, let's say, it is extremely beneficial to organizations to use participation in teams. However, it's important to know or to watch for certain criteria that you need to apply before you decide to use participation. And here are some of those criteria that you need to take into consideration before you decide to use participation. Because despite the many potential benefits that participation has, however, that's not what we call the cure-all for all the organization. Because in certain situations, it's good to use participation. However, that does not mean that in other situations that might be appropriate. So that's why when we talk about using participation, we should, in a way, follow a contingency approach. And all these criteria are the ones that we should first consider before we decide, let's say, to use participation or not. And the first question or the first criteria that we need to look for is the complexity of the task, as well as the in cases when the multifaceted quality is quite important. And in these cases, it's important that we use participation, because complex tasks do require input from many people that do have different expertise. And in these cases, you will need participation because you have individuals that have different expertise, different opinion, rather than using your own opinion. We have people with different points of view that can help you to deliver quality decisions in this case. So the moment you have a task that is more complex, it's better to use participation. Also, it's important to use participation when follower commitment is needed, because if you want them to commit, you do not involve them, you do not ask them to participate, then it's let's say you're not going to have them on board later on when you need them. So follower participation will increase commitment as well as their motivation to support your objectives later on. Also, when there is a time, when you have enough time, then you can use participation, because participation is usually time consuming. So if you think you don't have enough time to involve everyone in the decision making or consult all of them, so better not to do so. If you have time, then it's something that you should be practicing, because as I said, using participation takes time. There are legitimate deadlines, time pressures as well. So when we talk about seeking extensive participation, so if you do not have the time, you better avoid participation. Another important criteria on when we need to use participation is when the leader and the followers are ready, and actually the moment that the organizational culture is supportive of this participation. So if you do not have this culture in place, it will be hard for you to use participation, because participation can only be successful if both the leader and followers do agree on to the benefits that participation provides to the organization. On the other side, both sides should be trained in how to use participation, and both sides should be committed to the success of participation. And as I said earlier, organizational culture must also encourage or at least tolerate employee participation. And the last, let's say, criteria that you need to apply before using participation is to see whether the interaction between leader and follower is not restricted by the task, the structure, or the environment of the organization. Because we know that participation mainly requires interaction between leaders and followers. And this interaction is only possible if restrictions because of factors like geographic location, structural elements, or task requirements are minimized. This geographic location is not a problem anymore, because we are all, let's say, now working remotely, and we have seen that you can easily manage a project even if you are dispersed around the world. So we have a team based here in Switzerland, we have a team based in Thailand, in some other parts of the world, and we manage to easily, especially nowadays, cooperate and participate together in different meetings where we take important decisions. So it's thanks to the latest technology that we can nowadays easily manage to, let's say, to participate or to engage individuals without, let's say, having these geographic constraints as it used to be in the past. So these are some of the main benefits of participation. So as we said, it's not that does not provide, it's not helpful to the organization. You might see that, let's say, from the group discussions that we have had earlier, how participation is helpful to you. Some of the main benefits of participation is development of followers, especially as we said earlier, when we deal with complex tasks, it's much better to use participation, as you can reach better decisions because you have individuals that have different points of view, different backgrounds, so they look at the problem from different perspectives, which leads to better decisions. As we said, it helps to increase the motivation and commitment of the followers, because if you do not engage them, if you do not, they do not participate, they do not feel that they are an important part, not only of the organization, but of a particular project that you are managing as a team. So the moment you involve them, especially in decision making, they are more motivated and they will later on commit more to successfully accomplish those particular tasks. And as I mentioned a little earlier, it's an opportunity for you to empower your followers. And empowerment is also related to motivation and commitment in this case. So it's through participation that you can empower your employees. An important issue when we when we talk about participation is the role of culture. So the moment that you would like to use participation, it's important that you take into consideration the national cultural values. So depending on national cultural values, you're gonna see, let's say that things are different. I remember during the time I was in Malaysia and we were having like a discussion, even in the classroom. However, it was a culture there that actually they do not like to discuss in public. And in a moment, the teacher, the lecturer said, let's do it our way or Malaysian way. So she asked them to individually go and discuss with her, and they were absolutely fine. I can see, let's say, from different classes that I have. So the moment I have people from, let's say, different nationalities or cultures, I can see that some of them are more participative in class, they engage in discussion, and some of them are not. And this shows actually that culture plays an important process. For example, in collectivist cultures, they more emphasize team process. So they more function as let's say, as a group rather than as individuals. On the other side, for example, power distance is also important. Higher power distance reduces team empowerment. The concept of human orientation also supports the use of teams, as well as the horizontal versus vertical dimensions that also do play an important role, let's say, in the process of team implementation. As I said, the collectivist cultures tend to emphasize more cooperative team processes, compensation, promotion that take into consideration the whole group. The more also the power distance is, the less likely that teams will be empowered on the other side. And as I mentioned earlier, it's mainly based on the globe findings that a human orientation, which includes concerns for other people and responsibility for their well-being, this may be an important factor that supports team-oriented and participative leadership. Because in these cases, you will need you will have concerns for other people, the responsibility for their well-being, which is something that we need to show and we need to have when we talk about participative management or working in teams as well. As we said earlier, the issue of delegation is another important when we talk about leading teams. So when we talk about delegation, we mainly talk about appointing someone to as deputy or representative and entrusting this particular person with a task that you are supposed to do. So when we talk about participation, it's different, and it's different in let's say a number of ways. Although in certain cases managers do or might use it interchangeably, or they might consider delegation as an aspect of participation. So many leaders would talk about themselves as participative managers if they delegate tasks to their subordinate. Although this practice actually might lead to more participation from the side of their subordinates in the decision making. However, when we talk about the delegation, the goal of the delegation is not necessarily to develop employees or to create more commitment. On the other side, a delegation does not always involve power sharing with the employees. So you do not share the power that you have the moment you delegate the task with the employees. You simply ask them to do the task, and the power remains in your own hands. So the goal of delegation can be as simple as helping, let's say, a leader or manager with the moment that they have excessive workload. However, you do not, in a way, delegate power sharing in this case. That's why delegation is mainly considered handing off a task to someone else in a more complex form. Delegation can resemble a participative management. However, as we said earlier, those are not considered to be the same. So when we talk about the benefits of delegation, the moment that you delegate tasks to your subordinates, you are gaining, let's say, you are gaining importance in this case. So managers see, let's say, their workloads to increase. So that's why in certain cases they decide to use delegation. So usually also organizations that are in certain cases going through restructuring within their organizations, they can use, they can test team-based approaches by using delegations as well. So some of the potential benefits of delegation are, let's say, delegation can help to free up the time of the leader for new tasks and strategic activities. So the moment that you have something more important to do, so you can delegate less important tasks to someone else and then devote your time to something that is more urgent, like new tasks, new strategic activities for the organization. Also, it provides the employees with the opportunities to learn and develop. By delegating tasks, you develop your employees, so they get to know how to do things. If you do not delegate tasks, they might never get the chance to do something. Also, it increases involvement of employees in tasks. It allows observation and evaluation of the employees in new tasks the moment you get that involved. And overall, as we mentioned earlier, because of this participation, which is involved in the process of delegation as well, employees' motivation and satisfaction is increased because they are, let's say, they will perceive that they are an important, let's say, part of the organization. So as we said, delegation provides, let's say, important benefits to the organization, as it allows subordinates to try new tasks, to learn new skills, to, let's say, feel they are being an important part of the organization, thereby increasing their motivation and satisfaction. So in this case, the employees can enrich their jobs and increase their satisfaction and motivation. So when they try something new, when they perform new tasks, on the other side, the leaders also have the opportunity to observe them, and then they can gather, or they can evaluate the employees, so they can gather performance-related information that they can further use for the future for, let's say, development purposes. If they would like to promote a particular employee, they can use them for evaluation purposes, or they can use them for training purposes, or to prepare their employees for promotions and what aspects they need to focus on in this case. However, as with any of the tools, like we discussed earlier with participation, the same goes with the delegation. So the moment you do not know how to properly use delegation, that can fire back. So that's why misuse and misapplication of delegation can also be disastrous to the organization. That's why the leaders must take into account some simple principles before they decide to use or to apply delegation. So some of the main guidelines are, the first one is to delegate but do not dump. That's why you should delegate pleasant and unpleasant tasks. So do not only delegate unpleasant tasks to your subordinates and you keep the pleasant ones for you. That's why we say to delegate but do not dump. So you should delegate both pleasant and unpleasant tasks and provide followers with variety of experiences. You should clarify goals and expectations. Your subordinates, the moment you delegate tasks to them, they will need to have clear goals and guidelines, what is expected to them and what are the limitations that they have in this case. You should also provide support and authority. The moment you start delegating a task, you should also provide them the necessary authority that they will need, as well as resources they will need, like time. So you cannot delegate the task and ask them to finish as quickly as they need time to perform that particular job. Training, if they should have the necessary training to do a particular task, as well as advice to complete that particular task. Monitor and should provide feedback. So it's not that you delegate the task and you do not follow them. So you should monitor them on a continuous basis and provide feedback. So that's how they learn. That's why how you ensure also that the task is properly accomplished. That's why you should keep track of the progress and provide feedback during and after task completion at regular intervals. You should also not delegate the task to one single individual. So you have different subordinates, different followers, so delegate tasks to different followers. So you should mainly, when we talk about delegating tasks, delegate to those who are most motivated to complete them, as well as those who have potential but might not have clear track record of their performance. However, this is how you motivate, this is how you put them in charge to accomplish a particular task. You should also create a safe environment, and this is something that we can create by encouraging experimentation and allowing mistakes in these cases. So they can be motivated to try, because if we do not allow experimentation, if we do not allow mistakes, they might fear to take over a particular task because they are afraid that mistakes or or failure will be punished from the side of the management. That's why you should create a safe environment for these people to engage or to participate. And then you should develop your own coaching skills. So this is important for you as a leader. You should know how to coach individuals. That's why what you can do is you can take workshops, you can attend training classes. So that will ensure that you as a leader or as a manager here, you do have the necessary skills to do the process of delegation in these cases. So when we talk about why do leaders fail to delegate, there are particular circumstances that usually leaders, let's say, use to justify why they do not delegate. Mainly they do justify their unwillingness to delegate the task to their cases. It might be that followers are not ready for delegation, they are already overworked, or they have such specialized jobs that they cannot be assigned, let's say, a new task. They can take this situation. So these are some of the main excuses that we usually hear why, let's say, the managers or do not delegate. And the first excuse is that they have followers that are not ready to take delegation. So leader's job is to get their followers prepared to take on new tasks. So if they are not prepared, it's actually a failure of the management. So that's not an excuse. Also, they have an excuse that my subordinates do not have the necessary skills and knowledge to delegate the task. Again, even here is the responsibility of the management to make sure that the followers do have the necessary skills to be prepared for new challenges. So they should make sure that their employees are updated all the time with the necessary skills and knowledge that they need. That's why it's the leader's responsibility to also train the followers and prepare them for new challenges. Some leaders might say that they feel not comfortable to ask their followers to do many of their tasks. However, this is not an excuse, because only a few tasks cannot be delegated. That's why it's important, as we said earlier, you need to delegate, but do not dump. So you should know how to balance delegation of pleasant and unpleasant tasks when we talk about your subordinates. And this should be something that you should appropriately do. On the other side, leaders, managers can say that they can much faster do the job than delegating it to the subordinates. So they can say that I can do the job quicker myself. However, that should not be the case, because you should take time to train your followers, and in this case, you free up your time in the long run, because you can do it now. However, you will not have someone for the future to do that task again. So either now or in the future, you will need to waste that time to let's say to teach your subordinates to do a task. So you free your time for the future if you let's say take time to train your followers now. So in the long run, you will have more time. You can free up your time because those particular tasks will be done by your followers. They have another excuse that they can say that followers have their own, let's say, specialized tasks, design tasks. So they are too busy to take new tasks from the manager. However, this shows that both, as we said earlier, managers and leaders are not, let's say, prepared for this kind of participation. So leaders and followers must learn to manage their workload by setting their own priorities. Another excuse that they might use to say that why they do not engage in delegation is that if my followers make a mistake, it's my own responsibility. So they are afraid that if things do not work properly, it's the manager that will be held responsible at the end. However, as we said earlier, it's the management that should encourage experimentation, they should tolerate mistakes, and these are some of the essential part in the process of learning and development within the organization. So if you do not encourage experimentation, if you do not tolerate mistakes, you cannot, let's say, provide your employees with opportunities to learn and develop new skills. And the last excuse that they can have is that, let's say, my own manager may think that I'm not working hard. So by delegating tasks, the manager might think that these particular their own manager might think that this particular manager would only like to get rid of the task and ask other people to do, like describing him as lazy. However, that should not be considered, let's say, in these cases, because doing busy work sometimes is not an appropriate use of leaders' time. That's why, as we said earlier, delegation is extremely important because it allows you to free up your time so you can focus on a more strategic and higher level activities. So why waste your time with, let's say, some jobs that easily can be done by your subordinates, by your followers, so you can free up your time to focus on strategic or higher level activities within your organization. So this excuse is not considered appropriate even in these cases. So when we talk about participative management, we mainly talk about how teams are functioning, and in many organizations that are made that have made actually teams to be a permanent feature of this organization, in certain cases even a cornerstone of their structures. Teams do create, let's say, a formal structure through which participation in decision making can be achieved, especially when we talk about the use of teams in the United States, in Western countries. This is something that came to a great extent by the economic success of Japan and the reliance that Japan organization had on teams as well as participative management. However, when we talk about, let's say, groups or teams, both of groups and teams do involve people working together, and this getting together is mainly because they have a particular goal that they have described. So all work together toward the goal. However, they, let's say, they differ alongside particular, let's say, particular characteristics. And here we can see some of the main characteristics of teams, and later on, or you in the book, you can see some of the main characteristics of groups. So when we talk about teams, members are fully committed to common goals and a mission that they develop. When we talk about groups within the organization, members mainly do work on a common goal. So there is no mission that they have developed. When we talk about teams, members are mutually accountable to one another. When we talk about groups, members are only accountable to their manager in these cases. Also, members trust one another, and the team does enjoy a collaborative culture. Compared to groups where members do not have a clear, stable culture within their groups, and usually in groups we have a, let's say, a conflict which is extremely frequent. On the other side, in teams, members do share, all do share in leadership. So there is no assigned leader within the teams. Whereas when we talk about groups, leadership is assigned to a single person. On the other side, groups may accomplish their goals. However, when we talk about teams, they do achieve synergy in this case. So what we call 2 + 2 is equal to 5. That's only possible when you are going to use teams. As we said earlier, while some teams, they do rely on an external leader, however, SMTs, or what we call the self-managed teams, these are teams of employees with full managerial control over their work. And most of the, let's say, successful organizations, they are using SMTs, like Toyota, Procter & Gamble. They have been using SMTs successfully for decades. And for example, we're going to discuss later on, we have a case like the leading change case, which talks about Google and how Google uses teams. So it shows how the teams at Google are given both not only authority, but also autonomy to make many of their decisions within Google. And here we have some of the main characteristics of self-managed teams. The first one is power to manage their work. So they are the ones responsible to set goals, to plan, also to do the staffing schedule, to monitor quality and implement their own decisions. Members with different expertise and functional experience. So you have these self-managed teams are usually formed by people that come from different departments, different functions within the organization. They come from marketing department, finance, production, design, and so on. So there is a broad range of experience, broad range of expertise that helps these teams to manage all aspects of their work. Another characteristic of this team is that there is no outside manager. There is an absence of an outside manager. So these kind of teams, they do not report to any outside managers. Team members, do manage themselves. They do manage their budget, and they do manage also their tasks and their workload through shared leadership. Also, so these self-managed teams, they do have the power to implement their decisions. So the decisions that they take, they have the power and the resources necessary to implement their own decisions, compared to the groups that we discussed earlier, that usually it's the leader that has this decision-making right. Also, coordination and cooperation with other teams and individuals, which is affected by the decisions of the team. And because, as we said earlier, each team is independent and does not formally report to a manager. So these teams themselves, they rather than the managers, are the ones responsible to coordinate their tasks and activities to assure integration. So they should themselves manage this kind of integration of the activities. And the last characteristic of this self-managed team is the fact that team leadership is based on facilitation. So it's usually leadership within these kind of teams that rotates among the members, and it mainly depends on the expertise that each of these members does have in handling the specific situation. So instead of a leader who tells everyone what to do, set goals, monitors achievement, team leaders in these cases, they do remove obstacles from the team and they make sure that the team has the resources that it needs. And in these cases, the primary role of the leaders in these self-managed teams is not to lead, but to facilitate rather than to control. So facilitation in these cases means that the leader mainly should focus on freeing the team from obstacles. And in these cases, it will allow the team to reach the goals that they have set in advance. Another important aspect, so when we talk about we just talk about self-managed team, is also self-leadership. And this is considered to be an extension of participative leadership. So when we talk about both traditional and participation-based leadership, the source of leadership is external followers. And usually this is something that we have within the leader. In self-leadership, the follower leads himself or herself. That's why self-leadership is the process of influencing yourself or oneself. And usually this concept of self-leadership is based on social cognitive theory that recognizes that people can manage and can control their behavior. And it is also based on the motivation theory that also suggests that natural internal rewards can be a powerful motivator to individuals. So when we talk about self-leaders, they do have particular elements that identify these kind of people. First of all, they develop positive and motivating thought patterns. So individuals and teams, they do seek and develop environments that do provide positive cues and supportive and motivating environment for these self-leadership to develop. Also, they do set personal goals. They set their own performance goals as well as performance expectations. They, on an ongoing basis, observe their behavior and then they do self-evaluation of their behaviors. So they observe their own and other team behaviors. And then based on this observation, they do provide feedback and critique as well as they do evaluate the performance of one another. And the last aspect or element of self-leadership is self-reinforcement. So team members do provide rewards and support to one another. So they do reinforce, let's say, they do reinforce themselves by providing rewards and support to one another in these cases. That's why the role of formal leaders is primarily to lead others to lead themselves, or to facilitate the self-leadership energy within each of subordinates. And if you would like to develop this kind of self-leadership, there are particular strategies or particular guidelines that you need to follow. And these are some of the followings: listen more, talk less, ask questions rather than provide answers, share information rather than hoard it. You should also encourage independent thinking rather than compliant followership, and you should also encourage creativity rather than conformity in these cases. So as I think it was discussed in the beginning, and if I'm not mistaken, this is something that Katarun mentioned. One of the main challenges that leaders face is how to, let's say, how to create their teams. So how to build effective teams within the organization. And there are particular factors that usually the leaders that do constitute these teams make. And one of the main factors is the size of the team. And the main mistake that many of the leaders do make is try to include too many people, either to provide representation, or they think that more people would provide more ideas. So there are important issues when we talk about when we talk about the team. So teams should be small enough for members to work closely together and interact easily. That's why research also shows that many people do also underestimate how much more time is actually required to get things done when teams or groups do become large. That's why it's important to keep the groups or the teams small enough for members to work closely together. Although there is no ideal group size, however, groups larger than 8 to 12 members are less likely to function smoothly. Something which is suggested is that you should always keep an odd number of members. So this is extremely important because this can protect you against deadlocks in case of disagreement. So for example, let's say if you have 8 members and if you come to voting, for example, you might have 4 in one side, 4 on the other side. So that's a deadlock. That's why it's important to have, let's say 9. So in case of voting, you can easily avoid this kind of deadlocks. Another important aspect when we talk about the factors that we need to take into consideration when we talk about teams is the composition of the team. So is the membership of the group composition, and one of the key consideration is the nature and requirements of the task. This is something that we should take into consideration. Also, extensive research suggests that groups that have homogeneous members that come of similar backgrounds, usually we have much higher cohesion in this kind of cases, and they often can reach decisions more quickly. And this is something that we can see in this particular figure that we have here. So homogeneous members that have the similar backgrounds, they achieve higher cohesion, and they often reach decisions much more quickly in these cases. And this usually happens because of the similarity of perspective that these people have. So they are likely to achieve cohesion much faster than, let's say, heterogeneous groups. For example, they can also agree on processes and alternatives. So in these cases, because of this homogeneity, they can reduce conflict and provide members with validation and a sense of being, let's say, right in these cases. However, too much similarity is not always good, and it can cause several problems. So the higher the cohesion, sometimes the false belief in the rightness of the group. So this is one of the key contributing factors to what we usually call a group think. So this is something that we're gonna discuss later in this chapter, what groupthink is. Second, let's say, disadvantages of homogeneities, that these kind of groups, they tend to lose, let's say, they tend to lose their creativity. As you can see here, heterogeneous groups, they are more creative. So we have individuals that come from different backgrounds, so they provide different perspectives. That's why they are considered to be more creative. So these diverse perspectives have been found to be extremely important when we talk about facing complex situations. Also, diverse groups do consider a wide range of alternatives. That's why they can generate, higher quality decisions, and a diverse group is more likely to also integrate information that can improve their process of decision making. And in certain cases, if conflict, especially when it is managed well, when we talked about heterogeneous groups, because in homogeneous group we have less conflict. If these heterogeneous groups, they manage well the conflict, they can be highly beneficial to teams and their creativity. That's why the moment they would like to select their members, team leaders need to balance the need for easy, comfortable interaction with the importance of creative and productive group processes. So based on the team based on the task or based on the let's say the needs that they have, it's how they should compose their team. So in certain cases, they might go for a more homogeneous group, and in certain cases, if a task is complex, they need better decisions, better perspectives. So that's where they will have to go for a more heterogeneous group. When we talk about the environment within the team, it's also considered to be an important aspect, and that's where comes the role of the leaders as an important factor in building effective teams. And the role of the leader changes as the team environment changes. However, that's not something that altogether disappears. So these are some of the let's say the main roles of the leaders within the team. So the leaders, something that we need to understand is that they are not in charge and are not meant to command and control the team. That's why that when we talk about team leadership, it is suggested that it should be less hands-on. That's why many, let's say, would refer to team leaders as facilitators rather than coaches. And these figure here provides some of the main roles that team leaders have within their teams. So coordinate activities, define team boundaries, to help them define goals, to make individual contributions, to counsel and encourage, to obtain training, to also help manage conflict, to observe from distance, and then to assess the team. So these are some of the main roles that leaders, let's say, leaders have on their followers. One important aspect that we, especially when we talk about preparing your team for these team building activities, there are some particular training activities that the organizations usually can use or can apply in order to get their teams ready for, let's say, to build cohesive teams. They can use team training, cross training, coordination training, self-guided training, or they can, in certain cases, use assertiveness training in cases they see that members within the team, they do have problems with their assertiveness. Team building training is usually used to clarify team goals and member roles, and then it's within these training activities that they do set patterns for acceptable interaction within the team. Cross-training is mainly used to ensure that team members do understand the tasks that each other do have. They can also use coordination training, which allows these team members to work together by improving communication and coordination among team members. Self-guided correction training is used to teach these team members to monitor, to assess, and to correct their behavior in the team. And as I said, assertiveness training is mainly used to help team members to express themselves appropriately, especially when they would like to make a request, when they would like to provide feedback and other interactions among themselves. So this will improve not only communication, but also avoid conflicts within the organization. And as we said in the beginning, one last aspect that we're gonna discuss is dysfunctions in teams. So although teams, as we said, can be extremely beneficial to organization, however, this is how we started our lecture. So it's extremely challenging to their leaders because not all teams do function well. Some do fall prey to various problems. So in these cases, organizations can suffer because they can cause organization to spend more time in conflict, than in performing activities necessary to achieve their goals. And some of the main dysfunctions of teams are the ones that you can see in this slide. One of them is the concept of groupthink, and this is something that was first introduced by Janice around 1982 to describe dysfunctional group processes that can occur when group members focus on being cohesive, so they do not express disagreement or they think, let's say, critically, and as a result they make based decisions. When cohesive groups usually do face a complex situation, they insulate themselves from outsiders. So they fail to consider different alternatives. And instead, they reach a quick agreement that protects the group sense of cohesion. And a key antecedent of groupthink is the directive leadership that further encourages quick agreement. That's why once these conditions are in place, groups that fall prey to groupthink, they show a number of symptoms that we can see in this particular slide, like illusion of invulnerability, they believe in the morality of the group, rationalization. Usually they have particular stereotypes of those that do not belong to the group, self-censorship, illusion of anonymity, direct pressure, as well as self-appointed mind guards. And as a result of these symptoms that you see, that has also crucial, or let's say, consequences for the team, because they do not consider any outside perspective. There is poor information gathering, so it mainly depends on the information that they have within themselves. And as we are talking about a cohesive group, they might not consider or express disagreement in this case, or to think critically. That's why there is a poor information gathering. Selective information processing, they only select those information that suits what they think, and they do not, as you said, let's say, collect or consider information that would disagree with. They only consider a few alternatives. They do not consider a risk. They do not evaluate different alternatives to the decisions that they have. That's why they end up also having not having also a contingency plan in these cases. Another let's say, important dysfunction of the teams is free riders. This is something that you might have even experienced as students in the past within the teams that you have been with. So this is one of the common complaints that people have when they work in teams. Usually there will be free riders, so people who do not contribute fully but still benefit from the work of the team. So this is usually what we call free riders, and these individuals appear to be more common in individualistic cultures, because in collectivist groups usually we have this sense of group and the need to be part of the group, so which usually prevents people from free riding. However, when we talk about individualistic cultures, as we know, the focus is on individual contribution, which actually reinforces the need to have equal and similar contribution from all team members. And this usually is what causes them to feel a sense of unfair advantage when we face potential free riders within the group. Another dysfunction of the teams is what we call the negativity, or the bad apples. Usually when we talk about teams or groups, especially when we talk about the positive behavior and attitudes, usually when we talk about teams, negativity can quickly spread and damage the cohesion, effectiveness, or even lead to unethical behavior of the team. That's why we call the bad apples. So if you have bad apples, let's say in a basket, so those bad apples will, in a way, erode nor damage the other apples within the basket. So once you have an unhappy, unmotivated team member, this can have an disproportionate negative effect on his team. So that's why these bad apples are often focused on their own goals. They are not cooperative, or they might not be willing to contribute. So their constant complaining, lack of motivation also can put the group down and prevent other team members for achieving the goals that they have assigned in the beginning. And the last dysfunction in teams is the lack of cooperation. An effective team is usually a team where you have each members trusting one another to work toward a common goal. That's why cooperation depends heavily on the presence of trust. And usually the moment you have a trust, this results in having a sense of safety within the team. So this will allow group members to experiment, to learn, and make mistakes without fear of someone, let's say, ridiculing you or someone using retribution in these cases. So these were some of the main dysfunctions when we talk about teams. If you would like to help teams to become, let's say, more become more effective, there are many recommendations on how to help these teams become more effective. Membership in teams especially should be voluntary, and their objective and purpose must be clear. In cases needed, as we saw earlier, you must provide appropriate training. However, leaders should not leave the teams unmonitored. There should be continuous monitoring. So in case you see any dysfunction, you can interfere and take appropriate actions. And you should develop cooperation and trust, because lack of cooperation will lead to teams not being effective, but also not achieving the common goals that you have assigned from the beginning. And if you would like to build trust, in this figure is like there are particular guidelines on how we can build trust, and this is considered to be one of the important roles of leaders if they would like to help them to become more effective. As we said, it's to support the group to develop trust. And when we talk about trust, that requires a number of factors, which you can see in this particular figure. So if you would like to build trust, the team members, actually, they must demonstrate integrity, competence, and hard work, as well as mutual respect. Also, cooperation should be rewarded in these cases rather than competition. They should be fair to one another. They should celebrate team success as well as individual success, and they should be communicating openly with one another in these cases. So going back to the initial question that we usually pose at the beginning of the lecture. So while, as we said, teams can be extremely productive, however, in certain cases they are overused. That's why that creates difficulties for the managers to implement them. That's why, especially, we discuss the importance of culture. In many individualistic cultures, working in teams is challenging, because you will have to bring these different individuals to work together who are used to work individually. So culture is extremely important when we talk about constituting successful teams and managing effective teams. Also, when we talk about effective teams, organizations often do reward individual stars and individual performance. And these are factors that make the implementation of teams more difficult. We're going to see later on, we're going to have a case on what would you do when you were in such position. That's why if you would like to succeed as a team, A team should be used only when they can actually contribute more than individuals alone could contribute. So if you have, let's say, if there is a particular task objective that can be accomplished by someone individually, there you don't need teams, because later on that that can fire back, that can have negative effects. That's why in situations where teams are appropriate, members and leaders should receive training on issues like culture, cooperative decision-making, as well as conflict management, because these are, let's say, issues that you can never avoid when we talk about the team. So they will need to know how to manage these things. And when the managers do use, or when they use teams, they must be prepared to delegate well, and they must be prepared to also help them clarify the boundaries of their tasks and responsibilities. However, something that we should understand at the end is that teams are not a cure-all for the organization. However, they are one of the tools that many of the managers do have available in order to better manage or accomplish the goals and objectives they have assigned within their organization. So that was all with regards to this lecture. Do you have any question? Okay, if we have no question, I suggest that we go with this "what do you do?" a small exercise, and then we will come back after. Let's say we'll take a little longer break because it has been more than an hour. We're gonna take like 20 minutes of break, so you can have a drink or pause for a while. So you have been assigned to put together a team to support a high-profile client with a new product your company has developed. However, your boss has given you the pick of any of you would like. However, the boss is suggesting that you pick the best and the brightest performance to assure that the clients get top-notch service. So what factors do you consider to create your team in this case? Any idea? So how would you go about collecting those individuals? What criteria you would take into consideration before, let's say, deciding to include someone as part of your team?
I think maybe we have to know the time frame first, so we can consider, because from what Professor explained earlier, let's say like we have like a heterogeneous group and the homogeneous group. So of course, if you would like, or we would like to have the very best performance or something like that, I guess we should go with the diversity type. That means the heterogeneous group.
Yeah.
But of course, it's going to take more time, something like that, because if the task is going to be more complex and we need the quality, then it's quite important that we need the different, how to say, the expertise.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, Katarina. Anyone else?
Yeah, I'd also consider mixing the groups in the sense that I will not get just the best and the brightest, because that would entail a lot of analysis. You know, whenever you brainstorm, there is going to be tons of strategies going on if you have all the best and the brightest in that group. I would have a mix of thinkers and doers, meaning those who are good in operations. Some would be good in strategy, some would be good in operations, so that you have the legwork, the so the project can be running. And I like mixing people for check and balance. It is very healthy for a group to have checks and balances. So I like mixing people.
Yeah, okay.
When it comes to timeline, I think it's the function of the head, you know, to manage the timeline, because that's his or her function. It's really to put things in place and to remind people that they have deadlines to meet.
Okay, anyone else?
Or in my opinion, I will think just firstly I will not decide how many people I want to create in my team. I think just for the one client, 2 or 3 people in my team is enough. So I will pick up someone with has know well about the client, and the second thing, they have to know well about our product. So and these people, I will choose if they are hardworking or not, because this is very important client for us. So if they are not hardworking and they are not just have the same thinking with me, so it's difficult to make the agreement faster. So I will be on that one to decide to choose the people for my team.
Thank you, Anna. Okay, so I think 3 of you did mention some of the important aspects that we need to take into consideration when we decide to make a team. Although it seems logical that, let's say, the moment you have the best and the brightest, these are likely to perform well when you put all together. However, it's not necessarily the case. So as some of you did mention, we need to consider size and composition, diversity, especially diversity on the variety of dimension, like the expertise of these individuals, their strength as well as perspective. So this is extremely essential. Also, when we talk about composing these kind of teams, teams can be effectively only if members do work well together. And this is something that we should always have in mind. And only having together the high performers, what we call the best and the brightest, that will not guarantee you that they can work well together in this case. That's why it's important to consider all these different issues of size and composition, diversity, also diversity or variety of dimensions like expertise, strength, as well as perspective that we need in this kind of project.